Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball, guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. This episode features the all-time top 9 teams that didn't make the playoffs. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings, Prime 9. There are few things more frustrating for a baseball fan than to have a championship-caliber team that doesn't even make it to the postseason.
Say bye-bye and say night-night.
Well, we've got them. Wonderful teams that fell prey to extraordinary efforts by another team and ended up wondering, what if?
Deep to left. Yastrzemski will not get its home run.
Every one of our non-playoff teams predates the wild card era, and yet we still span a spectrum of almost 90 seasons.
That ball's hit well. A home run for Barry Bonds.
So here they are, the teams that had the potential to sip World Series champagne, but never even got past the bouncer. We begin with number 9 on Prime 9. Cincinnati's Big Red Machine was a powerhouse throughout much of the 70s, and the Reds remained a team to contend with once the next decade dawned.
In 1981, you still had some remnants of the Big Red Machine left. Ken Griffey was still a good player. They also had Dave Concepcion.
Dave Collins had one of his best years in a Reds uniform, and Johnny Bench. You had George Foster having an MVP caliber season.
It is gone. It's a home run.
The offense was still clicking. They were scoring runs.
464 of them, in fact, second most in the National League. And in 23 starts, Tom Seaver also led his league with 14 wins and had just 2 defeats.
And the 1-2 swung on and missed. He got him with a high fastball.
Tom Seaver finally had the supporting cast around him that was performing at a level that people remembered from the Big Red Machine teams.
Those memories were stirred even more when the Reds finished the '81 season with the best record in baseball. So how then did they ever miss the playoffs?
The 1981 Reds will forever be remembered in this city as the team that should have been in the playoffs and was not.
You see, this was the year of the mid-season players' strike, so the season was split, and only the teams with the best records in each division in each half went on to the playoffs.
Because of that strike-shortened season, the Reds wound up on the short end of the stick twice. They finished a half a game behind in the first half, and in the second half, they finished a game and a half behind. At the end of that 1981 season, to kind of capture the mood of the public, Dick Wagner, who was then the president and general manager of the club, unfurled a huge banner, best winning percentage in baseball, 1981. And in baseball history, it is the only time that the team with the most victories in a regular season has not played in the postseason.
The 1949 Red Sox were a machine of their own, especially at the plate, where they led their league in almost every major offensive category.
The 1949 Red Sox, they were in the midst of a 3-year period of tremendous offensive production.
There was a time that every hitter except the pitcher in the lineup were 300 hitters. It wasn't just a question of 3, 4, and 5. It was a question 1 through 8. You had Dom DiMaggio leading off, and he got 200 hits a year. You had Pesky hitting second. He got 200 hits a year.
A young Billy Goodman at first base, a 300 hitter, singles, doubles kind of hitter. Vern Stevens, a vastly underrated power-hitting shortstop.
Bobby Doerr was a complete second baseman. He was a run-scoring machine.
And they had Ted Williams, the league MVP, who missed winning his 3rd Triple Crown when he fell 1 hit shy of capturing the batting title.
That could have been all around maybe his greatest season. He led the league in so many categories.
All eyes are on Big Ted himself, the greatest hitter in the game today and the most valuable.
You look at the 49 Red Sox and you wonder, how did they lose the pennant? This was one of the great powerhouse clubs.
Especially at Fenway, but they couldn't replicate that brilliance on the road.
Unbelievably, they went 61-16 at home. They scored like 580-something runs at home and only 380-something on the road. They had a fatal flaw. They were built to take advantage of Fenway Park.
Boston used its home field advantage to overcome a 12-game deficit and take a 1-game lead over the Yankees with 2 to play. But those games would take place at Yankee Stadium.
It went down to the wire. Red Sox came into New York leading by 1 game. We had 2 games to play. If they won one of the 2, it's over, they win it. If we win both of them, we win it.
But Boston was unable to overcome its woes on the road.
And the Yankees win the American League pennant as the fans and players go wild with joy.
The Red Sox had become an historic footnote.
They had the 4th best home won-loss record ever. And of the top 5, they're the only ones who did not win the pennant.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the all-time top 9 teams that missed making the playoffs. We've made our case for 9 and 8, which means it's time for number 7.
The Dodgers in '42, they were defending National League champions. They had lost the World Series to the Yankees the year before.
The Dodgers were breaking in a number of great young players such as Pee Wee Reese and Pete Reiser.
Reiser's 5th inning home runs accounted for 2 runs, putting the Dodgers in front.
They combined those young stars with carryover players such as Dolph Camilli.
Dolph Camilli was an older player, power-hitting first baseman.
Camilli's 26 home runs and 109 RBIs helped Brooklyn win games at an amazing pace.
They started out on fire in 1942. They were 51-20 at one point.
They were also getting some fine performances on the mound, posting the 3rd lowest ERA in the majors.
They had a veteran pitching staff, no future Hall of Famers there, but a solid bunch.
Led by Kirby Higbee, also including Whit Wyatt and Kurt Davis.
Starting on the mound for Brooklyn is Kurt Davis.
The real star might have been a 22-year-old named Hugh Casey, who came out of the bullpen in a time when we started to see relievers be used more aggressively.
Casey led the National League with 13 saves. The entire staff was just plain stingy.
They allowed the second fewest runs in the National League that year to only the Cardinals, who seemed to best them in just about every important category, most importantly wins.
The Dodgers were 73-30 on August 4th, but in the final 2 months, St. Louis soared in the standings.
Cardinals went 5-1 against the Dodgers down the stretch and passed the Dodgers in September. The Dodgers still played pretty well. They were 30-20 over the last 50 games, but Cardinals were 43-8 and won the National League by 2 games over the Dodgers.
And the fans who had followed the Cardinals to their league victory filled Sportsman's Park to capacity.
The Dodgers won more than 2/3 of their games that year, and all it did was put them in an exclusive club.
Only one non-playoff team ever had a better record, and that was the Cubs in 1909.
I'm not a guy to predict Eastern Division championships, but I know we're a hell of a ball club and we're going to be tough to beat.
The '78 Red Sox had an offensive attack that struck fear in the opposition.
Boston was the best hitting lineup that I've ever faced. You didn't have no easy outs. Somebody on the club, day in and day out, always got big hits.
None more so than Jim Rice, who put up numbers that were mind-boggling.
And there's a line shot, left field. Looking up, this ball is gone, a home run.
All year, he just crushed it.
To the tune of 406 total bases.
Which was the first time anybody had topped 400 total bases since Joe DiMaggio.
And look at the Red Sox greet Jimmy Rice at home plate.
But these free-swinging Sox also had some impressive arms on the mound.
The biggest thing in the first half of that season is the Red Sox starting pitching was tremendous. I mean, they had Louis Tiant, Bill Lee, Eckersley.
We blew through the first half of the season, nobody got hurt, and we were blowing teams out.
Ground ball, Scott short hops it, steps on the bag, the throw home, double play, and the game is over, and the Red Sox win it.
Injuries would hamper the Red Sox, cutting a one-time double-digit lead to 4 by September 6th. A 4-game sweep by the Yankees followed, but Boston then rebounded with an 11-2 run down the stretch.
They mounted this comeback. They won, an incredible number of their last games to force that 1-game playoff with the Yankees.
We go to tomorrow.
Carl Yastrzemski put Boston up early in that tie-breaking game, and they held a 2-run lead into the 7th. Cue the legend of Bucky Dent.
Deep to left. It's a home run. A 3-run home run for Bucky Dent. The Yankees now lead it by a score of 3-2.
90 games and get beat, it was a little disheartening, and I still give Bucky Dent hell when I see him once in a while.
Welcome back to Prime 9 and the game's best teams to just miss the playoffs. The 81 Reds kicked things off, followed by the 49 Red Sox. Next came the 42 Dodgers at number 7 and the 78 Red Sox at 6, which means it's time for number 5. The 1985 Yankees sure looked like a playoff team with a frightening combination of power and speed. They seemed able to score runs at will.
Way back! Bye-bye!
In 85, that was like a modern-day murderer's row. We had a tremendous lineup from top to bottom.
Let's start at the top, where Ricky Henderson would lead the league with 80 stolen bases.
Never get them. Oh, that's the way to run bases.
And score more runs than any player since Ted Williams in 1949.
Ricky Henderson was just phenomenal that year, along with Don Mattingly.
Deep to right field.
All of a sudden, Mattingly was evolving into this power hitter that nobody ever envisioned.
Don Mattingly hits the first pitch deep to right field. Look out!
Together, Ricky and Mattingly made for one of the most prolific tandems in the game.
To me, in baseball that year, it couldn't have been a better 1-2 punch. Done it myself.
And this dynamic duo had plenty of firepower around them.
Winfield, winning Hall of Famer.
Hey, that's gone!
Willie Randolph, he's like a 400 on-base guy.
That's a base hit.
King Griffey Sr.
And Griffey, bye-bye, home run.
The DH was Don Baylor. Here's a guy with over 1,000 ribbies and stands right on top of the plate.
It is way back. Say bye-bye.
We just kind of kept getting better and better and kept scoring runs. So, you know, we were a tough club to deal with.
Say bye-bye and say night-night.
Donnie Baseball was the AL MVP. The Yankees went on to win 97 games, but the team up north was just a bit better.
But you got to tip your hats to Toronto.
The Jays have won it! They've won the Eastern Division Championship!
Toronto won 99 games that year, and Kansas City ends up winning the World Series. We beat Kansas City 12 out of 13. We don't even get in the playoffs. It was a tough thing to swallow, not getting in the playoffs after that kind of year.
It felt like a fresh start in San Francisco in 1993. The Giants had new ownership, a new manager, and a new superstar in Barry Bonds.
That was big when Barry got there. I mean, that was like the big piece of the puzzle.
Oh, that ball's hit well. A home run for Barry Bonds.
We had a number of guys who were, you know, veteran players who'd been all-stars. I mean, down the line, Will Clark, Robbie Thompson, Willie McGee, Matt Williams.
Together, Bonds and Williams teamed up to hit 84 home runs and drive in 233 runs.
And it is gone! Home run, Matt Williams.
They had the two guys in the middle of the lineup who could crush you every time through, and they had enough pitching so that when they did, you couldn't get back in the game.
I had a dynamite team, and John Burkett and Trevor Wilson and Buddy Black. Then we had Rod Beck as our closer.
Giants win as Beck saves it.
On July 22nd, the Giants were 65-32 and held a 10-game lead over Atlanta. But just prior to that date, the Braves made a key acquisition, and that changed everything.
That's what shot those Braves over the top, when they got Fred Crime Dog McGriff.
Atlanta win an astounding 51-17 with McGriff on the field.
The Atlanta Braves have run the table against the Colorado Rockies.
Incredibly, the Giants would now have to beat the Dodgers in their final game just to tie the Braves for first, and Baker went with a rookie pitcher.
We had Solomon Torres as the starter that day, a very young pitcher that didn't have a whole lot of experience, but we just didn't have anybody else.
And Offerman hits it to left field, a base hit. Reed will score, and the Dodgers lead 3-0.
The game blew up instantaneously, and as it turned out, Torres was not prepared for that stage at all.
This incredible ride is over. After 103 victories, it falls one short.
As fate would have it, they come up with the wild cards next year.
Still another Giants team, this one from New York. battled hard to win the pennant, despite being decided underdogs to the back-to-back league champs.
For the 1908 season, the Chicago Cubs were the universal favorites, and no one saw any reason why they wouldn't take the pennant for the third straight time.
The 1908 Giants had an impressive array of hitters and dominated their league offensively. It was more than enough firepower for one of the best pitchers of this or any era.
Here's one of baseball's unforgettable combinations. Roger Bresnahan catching and Big Six Christy Matheson pitching.
He was the first real pitcher who had a repertoire of pitches. I mean, he was a guy who could throw a fastball very, very fast.
Christie won 37 and made 44 starts that year, capturing the pitching Triple Crown. He did all he could to keep John McGraw's Giants out in front.
Down the great pennant race with the Cubs, he pitched almost every other day to carry the Giants on his shoulders.
Come late September, the Giants and Cubs were tied for first when they played a legendary game at the Polo Grounds.
Christy Mathewson is pitching for the Giants and does his usual sterling work.
In the bottom of the ninth, it was a tie game, and the Giants had men on first and third.
The preface to a play that would go down in history.
The man on first is a teenage rookie named Fred Merkel. Al Bridwell lines a single, Moose McCormick lumbers home, and Fred Merkel, instead of going all the way to second base, he lights out for the clubhouse. Now, why does he do this? Because the 20,000 Giants fans are so happy they're streaming onto the field, and he doesn't want to get mobbed.
But he didn't touch second, and a force out was eventually called. The run didn't count, and because of Merkel's boner, the game was ruled a tie.
At the end of the season, the Giants and the Cubs finished in a dead heat, and therefore that game had to be replayed from the start.
But the Giants lost that game despite having their ace on the mound, ending their season with 98 wins, knowing forever that thanks in part to an infamous play, they had been less than 90 feet from taking control of the chase. We now return to Prime 9, where in this episode we're featuring the all-time top 9 teams to not make the playoffs. These are all really good teams that fail to reach the postseason, often due to an incredible year by someone else. So which two teams stand out as the hard-luck champions of baseball, having just missed out on the chance to win it all? We begin with number 2. After watching the New York Yankees capture 10 of the last 12 pennants, the Detroit Tigers came roaring into the 1961 season.
We had a heck of a team. We had some great pitchers on that ball club, starting out with Frank Larry.
Frank Larry, the American League's top pitcher, will pitch for the Bengals today.
We thought it was a very good rotation.
They had good pitching and good defense and fine manager Bob Sheffing, and everything fitted together.
First baseman Norm Cash had a breakout year to help the Tigers keep pace with New York, hitting .361 with power.
Everything he hit hard, and a ball hit into the infield would find the hole it would go through, and then he'd get the bat on one and hit a good home run.
Norm Cash unloads a terrific wallop over the fence in right for a solo homer.
41 home runs after just 18 the year before. He would have been a big, big story, but the Yankee guys were stealing all the headlines.
Mantle and Maris, dial M for murder.
Well, after all, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris were chasing Babe Ruth's single-season home run mark, and the Tigers became an afterthought.
Everybody had a great year that year. We led the league a lot of the year, but the Yankees, unfortunately, everybody on their team had a little better year.
Still, the Tigers stayed neck and neck with the Yankees through August. Then, on September 1st, they began a 3-game series in the Bronx, a set that would go a long way toward crowning a champ.
The two-team race for the 1961 American League pennant between the New York Yankees and the Detroit Tigers reaches a critical point in the opener of a 3-game showdown series at Yankee Stadium.
The downfall of the Tigers was when we went into Yankee Stadium and they blew us away.
Bombers continue their winning ways to send the Tigers pussyfooting out of town, 4.5 games out of first place.
We lost the pennant by 8 games and won 101 games.
Usually 100 games is a guarantee that you're going to win your league. But that year, the Yankees were great. We were really good, but not good enough.
The year was 1922, and the St. Louis Browns found themselves in uncharted territory.
They'd only finished in the top half of the league 3 times in the American League's first 21 years. However, it was a transitional time for the American League from the great A's and Red Sox teams of the teens into what became the Yankees era.
Generally, the key to winning baseball games is to score runs and prevent runs, and the Browns were the best in the league at both of those.
First baseman George Sisler had a magnificent year and was named the American League MVP.
In 1922, George Sisler actually broke the American League record of Ty Cobb with a 41-game hitting streak.
In addition to Sisler, they had a very deep and talented outfield that provided a lot of their offensive firepower.
Outfielder Ken Williams hit 39 home runs to dethrone Babe Ruth as the home run champ, and was the first man ever to hit 30 home runs and steal 30 bases. They also got good pitching from a great baseball name.
On the pitching side, Urban Shocker was by far their best pitcher. He started 38 games, had a 2.97 ERA, and was really the anchor of what was a good deep staff.
Fans began to believe that the Browns really might win it all.
If there was ever an opportunity for the Browns to overtake the Yankees, this was their year.
But in a late-season showdown dubbed the Little World Series, St. Louis came up short.
Well, the Browns came very close to winning the pennant, and then they fell off very quickly after that.
The Browns would never again win 93 games in a season. But in 1922, even that high-water mark wasn't enough. It would take 2 more decades for those St. Louis Browns to reach the World Series. And when they finally won their first pennant in 1944, they stayed home, facing the St. Louis Cardinals at Sportsman's Park in just the 3rd series ever in which all the games were played on the same field. They did lose in 6, but the franchise had a lot more success after it moved to Baltimore in 1954. The Orioles went on to win the World Series in 1966, 70, and 83.
And the Orioles are the world champions.
And their 1980 team, a pitching-rich squad who won 100 games, came very close to making this episode.
And Palmer has done it again.
For they were just edged out by a team from New York that won 103 games.
And the Yankees have won it.
That's our Prime 9. What's yours?